Yes.
Okay, recording progress. Now we can. So my share screen is there.
Yes, I'm going to do that, Maharaj. Now it's available, Maharaj. And request everyone to kindly mute yourself. Maharaj, over to you. Hare Krishna.
So this is a slide which we left off yesterday. We will continue as a recap and then move forward. Om Jnana Timandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshusumritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Panchakalpa Drubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyavescha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we left off with this slide. Sat means effect, Asat means cause, and Param refers to the ultimate truth, which is transcendental to the cause and effect. The cause of the creation is called the Mahatattva, or the total material energy, and its effect, the creation itself. But neither cause nor the effect exist in the beginning. They emanate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as did the energy of time. This is stated in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmati Asya Yatha. The source of birth of the cosmic manifestation, or Mahatattva, is the personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita. In the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 10, text 8, the Lord says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the fountainhead of all emanations. This material cosmos, being temporary, is sometimes manifest, sometimes unmanifest. But its energies emanates from the Supreme Absolute Lord. Before the creation, there was neither cause nor effect, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead existed with his full opulence and energy. So again, here the emphasis is given, and the whole this concept of the four Chatuh Shloki is to establish that the Lord was ever existing before, present, and in the future. The word Paschat Aham indicates that Lord exists after the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. When the material world is dissolved, the Lord still exists personally in the Vaikunthas. During the creation, the Lord also exists as he is in the Vaikuntha, and he also exists as a super soul within the material universe. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita 537, Goloka Eva Nivasati. Although he is perfectly and eternally present in Golok Vrindavan, in Vaikuntha, he is nevertheless all-pervading. Khila Atma Bhuta. The all-pervading feature of the Lord is called the Super Soul. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is said, Aham Krishnasya Jagat Prabhava. Cosmic manifestation is a display of the energy of the Supreme Lord. The elements, the material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego display the inferior energy of the Lord. The living entities are his superior energies. Since the energy of the Lord is not different from him. In fact, everything that exists in Krishna in his impersonal feature, sunshine, sunlight, and heat are not different from the sun. Yet simultaneously, they are distinct energies of the sun. Again, this is a very important analogy Srila Prabhupada is giving here. The sunshine, the sunlight, and the heat are not different from the sun. This we experience when there is the sun is in the sky, and you can see the brightness of the sun, and the sunshine is spread all over, which is removing all the darkness. At the same time, you feel the heat of the sun. But as Prabhupada explains, that they are there as in the sun, but at the same time we are distinct from the sun. The sunlight, sunshine, and the heat are part and parcel of the sun, but it is not the sun. So you can't take the source of heat as the sun, or the sunlight as the sun, or the sunshine as the sun, but all three put together becomes the sun. Similarly, the cosmic manifestation and the living entities are energies of the Lord, and they are considered to be simultaneously one with and different from him. The Lord therefore says, I am everything, because everything is his energy and is therefore not different from him. So of course, this is also explained to us many times when we study Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. And Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says, Amaivam sajiva bhuta jiva sanatana, that you are all my fragmental parts and parcels. And since we are fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, therefore we are same in quality as the Supreme Lord, which is also explained by Prabhupada. And this explanation is given very clearly that the living entity is Satchit Ananda. It is eternal, it is full of knowledge, full of bliss, and it is Vigraha. It has a very unique personal form. It doesn't lose its identity at any stage. Only it appears that sometimes we kind of lose the identity, and that is a false sense of perception. It's just like the example given, the bird, which is green in color, is flying in the sky, and you can clearly see that there's a bird flying in the sky. But as soon as that bird goes into the tree and sits on one of the branches in the tree, then the bird appears to be merged into the tree, because the green leaves and the green bird are very difficult to identify, or you can see them separately, unless you have a very focused eye and you see the bird as an individual living entity sitting in one of the branches. So similarly, for us, that false sense of perception is there, that we merge into the Supreme, but it doesn't appear that way in reality. So that analogy is given very clearly, that the bird is individual living entity, and when it merges into the tree, or so-called merges into the tree, it appears that it has become one with the tree, but it is still in its unique identity. So here, Krishna says, I am everything, because everything is his energy, and therefore non-different from him. So the spirit soul is not different. We have to have a very clear concept and understanding of this aspect. Yo vishyate so samiham indicates that the Lord is the balance that exists after the dissolution of the creation. The spiritual manifestation never vanishes. It belongs to the internal energy of the law of the Supreme Lord. It exists eternally when the external manifestation is withdrawn. The spiritual activities in Golok and the rest of the Vaikunthas continue unrestricted by material time, which has no existence in the spiritual world. Therefore, in the Bhagavad-Gita 15:6, it is said, Yad gatvana nirvatante adharma parama mama. The abode from which no one returns to this material world is the supreme abode of the Lord. Now, in this concept, Prabhupada is also establishing the fact, which is a fact of reality, that time only exists in the material world, because in the material world, our existence is based on relativity. We see things from point A to point B, and therefore there is a beginning and there is an end. And this is what we consider our existence as our beginning, that we take birth, and at death we finish. But this is the only concept of time in the material world. But in the spiritual world, as Brahma Samhita explains very nicely, saying, Navi Yovanam is that everything is ever fresh and youthful in the spiritual world. There is no concept of time, that there is in a process of aging, and therefore when we age, then naturally the aging process gradually takes us to deterioration, which is mentioned in Bhagavad-Gita, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. From Janma to Mrityu, there is Jara, which is old age, and Vyadhi means all kinds of anxieties and disease conditions. And of course, at the death, Mrityu means the end. But here, the spirit soul doesn't end, because it doesn't have a beginning. It is always there, it will always remain, and it will continue Only difference in the spirit soul is that because the spirit soul wants to remain independent of the Supreme Lord, separate from the Supreme Lord, then the Supreme Lord creates a temporary environment in which the living entity can exist independently or think it is existing independently. But even in the material world, even though you have your individual bodies, your mind and soul, you still are dependent on the Supreme Lord, because at every moment, as is explained, the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is always with you. The moment the Supreme Lord as Paramatma leaves you, then your existence becomes void. And that never happens, because the spirit soul is always accompanied by the super soul in every living entity and every living bodies. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, chapter 9, text 34. So this is the verse number 2 of the Chatuh Shloki. This is the second verse of the Chatuh Shloki in Chaitanya Charitamrita Lila, chapter 15, verse 119, translation and purport. What appears to be the truth without me is certainly my illusionary energy, for nothing can exist without me. It is like a reflection of the real light in the shadow. For in the light, there is neither shadow nor reflection. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, chapter 9, text 34. This is the second, as I said, this is the second verse of the Chatuh Shloki, which is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here further explanation is given in the Adilila chapter 1, text 54. So this is a more detailed explanation Prabhupada is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita about the second verse. The second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam of the Chatuh Shloki goes this way. O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusionary energy, that reflection which appears to be in the darkness. Again, the Lord is establishing, telling Brahma that anything which is separated from me is just an illusion. It is not a reality. So in the Adilila, Prabhupada is giving further insight to this. In the previous verse, the absolute truth and its nature have been explained. One must also understand the relative truth to actually know the absolute. The relative truth, which is called Maya or material nature, is explained here. Maya has no independent existence. One who is less intelligent is captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, but he does not understand that behind these activities is the direction of the Supreme Lord. The Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 9, text 10, this said, Madhya Dakshina Prakriti Surayate Suyate Chacharacharam. This material nature is working and producing moving and non-moving beings only by the supervision of Krishna. So this is emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita also by the Supreme Lord, that everything in the material world which is working and is produced, moving or non-moving, any matter or inanimate objects, are all possible by the potency of the Supreme Lord Krishna. The real nature of Maya, the illusionary existence of material manifestation, is clearly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is substance. The relative truth depends upon its relationship with the absolute for its existence. Maya means energy. Therefore, the relative truth is explained to be the energy of the absolute truth. So of course, again, here there's emphasis Prabhupada is making that the illusionary energy Maya is just the potency of the Supreme Lord, which appears to be real, but of course it is not real, because that is why it is called illusionary energy. Since it is difficult to understand the distinction between the absolute and relative truth, the analogy can be given for clarification. Absolute truth can be compared to the sun, which is appreciated in terms of two relative truths, reflection and darkness. Darkness is the absence of sunshine, And reflection is projection of sunlight into the darkness. Neither the darkness nor reflection has an independent existence. Darkness comes when the sunshine is blocked. For example, if one stands facing the sun, his back will be in darkness. Since darkness stands in the absence of the sun, it is therefore relative to the sun. The spiritual world is compared to the real sunshine. The material world is compared to the dark region where the sun is not visible. So again, this is a very clear analogy given that, when you are in facing the sun, you can see the sunlight, but in the back of you, there is no sunlight, that's what it is in darkness. But the absence of sunshine is the cause of darkness. But the absence of the presence of darkness is not independent of the sunshine. Because if there is no sunshine, then there is no darkness. Both are relative. Or in other words, what we say in our present day saying, it is the two sides of the same coin. So one side of the coin doesn't exist independent of the other side. Both are required. That is what makes the coin. There's heads and there's the tails. So both of them are interdependent on each other. What cannot exist separately. So the living entity, the supreme, cannot exist separately. It has to be in relation to the Supreme Lord. When the material manifestation appears very wonderful, this is due to the perverted reflection of the supreme sunshine, the absolute truth, as confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra. Whatever one can see here has its substance in the absolute. As darkness is situated far away from the sunshine, from the sun, so the material world is also far away from the spiritual world. The Vedic literature directs us not to be captivated by the dark region, Kama, but try to reach the shining region of the absolute, Yogi Dham. The spiritual world is brightly illuminated, but the material world is wrapped in darkness. In the material world, sunshine, moonshine, or different kinds of artificial light are required to dispel darkness, especially at night, for the nature of material world is dark. Therefore, the Supreme Lord has arranged for sunshine and moonshine. But in his abode, as described in the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 15, text 6, there is no necessity of lighting or sunshine or moonshine or electricity because everything is self-effulgent. So this aspect is also very clearly explained in the Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna is saying that in the material world you require artificial source of source of light to dissipate darkness. But in the spiritual world, everything is self-effulgent. So therefore, in the spiritual world, we do not need any form of artificial energy to bring light. Everything is self-effulgent. That which is relative, temporary, and far away from the absolute truth is called Maya or ignorance. This illusion is exhibited in two ways, as explained in the Bhagavad-Gita. The inferior illusion is inert matter. The superior illusion is a living entity. The living entities are called illusory in context only because they are implicated in illusory structure and activities of the material world. Actually, the living entities are not illusionary. They are parts of the superior energy of the Supreme Lord and do not have to be covered by Maya if they do not want to be, if they do not want to be so. So again, here a very clear emphasis is given by Prabhupada that the living entity are not in illusion, but because they want to be independent of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Supreme Lord creates an environment of this perception of illusion that you are independent, you are existing separate from the Supreme Lord. But as Prabhupada says here, the Supreme Lord, the superior energy of the Supreme Lord do not have to be covered by Maya if they do not want to be so. So the living entity has a choice. Either it can be is separate from the Supreme Lord, in that case, the Lord will arrange all facilities for you to enjoy separately and experience that perception of independence, but you don't have to, because by nature, our conscious position is to be subservient to the Supreme Lord, as Prabhupada explains in the Hare Krishna chanting mantra. This is not an artificial imposition of the mind. It's natural constitutional position of the living entity to be chanting the holy names and serving the Supreme Lord. The actions of the living entities in the spiritual kingdom are not illusionary. They are actual eternal activities of liberated soul. So again, this emphasis is given that in the material world, whatever we do is temporary. It is a beginning, it is middle and end. But in the spiritual world, all the activities are eternal. And these are activities that can only be performed in spiritual world by liberated souls who actually go back home, back to Godhead. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, chapter 9, text 35. This is the third verse. It is also, it is the third verse in the Chatuh Shloki. And this is again, we will go into now the third sloka. Because as we are going into the next slokas, the purpose are shorter. So the explanation is also very clearly given in the first two slokas. So the next two slokas are emphasizing a little bit more in depth. As the material elements enter the bodies of the living beings and yet remain outside of them all. I exist within all material creation and yet am not within them. This is the quotation from Bhagavatam 2:935. This is also explained as a third verse of Chatuh Shloki, and we'll go now into the next stage of text 55 of Adi Leela, chapter 1, where further elaboration is given. Are we in time or Krishna?
Maharaj, we are very much in time. It's 24 past 6, Maharaj. So we still have 6 minutes more.
Okay, so then I will conclude at this point because we'll have some questions. And I will go into this third verse tomorrow.
Okay, Maharaj. That'll be fine. So we can, yeah. Okay. So Hare Krishna. So today we did the explanations. Many of you who have been attending the Bhagavatam readings daily, we have read through the purports from Srimad Bhagavatam, and Maharaj has brought in the explanations from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is really wonderful. So I have one question on today's reading, and then we'll open the floor to every one of you to kindly have your questions or comments ready. So Maharaj, just before we ended, we were talking about that, living entity has a choice. So a question, which is a billion-dollar question in the sense that it seems very clear that there is a choice. You exercise with your minute free will the right choice of connecting with the Lord, then life is good. But yet there is a very intense need for human beings to be independent. So the question is, in spite of sometimes knowing that being dependent on the Lord is the right choice, yet the want to be independent overpowers that. Why?
Well, it is very clearly explained that since, excuse me, since we are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Lord is independent. He's not dependent on anyone. He's a power unto himself. So similarly, since we are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, we have that ability to experience independence. But as Srila Prabhupada explains, that our independence is very minute. We don't have the full independence. it is minute independence. So in terms of say in relative understanding, in terms of say numbers, the Lord is 100% independent. You and I as living entities are 1% independent. But that 1% gives a perception that we are 100%. That is what we call illusion. So we have that independence, and therefore it is explained very clearly that the living entity, as long as it is in all the other forms of life forms, it will exist. Excuse me. It will exist simply on the basis of its natural. Excuse me. This is signs of ecstasy. So, choking, choking of the voice comes when you're in ecstasy. But this is actually sickness. Hare Krishna. This is another illusion. So, see, the living entity is thinking that I am independent. But as they explain in the scriptures, that there are 8,400,000 species of life, 400,000 are human species. So, barring the human species, all the other species, they act on natural instinct of survival. So they do what is necessity for them to do. They do not go beyond that. They don't sort of go and sit on one beautiful morning. They're sitting under a tree and saying, hello, it's a beautiful morning. What shall I do today? Shall I go and have some leisurely time and go and play golf? Or shall I go to the cinema and watch a movie? Or shall I go onto the beach and just lie on the beach and take a pina colada? No. They just do what comes natural to them. But you and I, because we are human beings, we have got what Prabhupada explains from the scriptural point of view is we have free will, which is akin to that minute independence. So you have free will. And to exercise that free will, the Lord has given you the ability to do what you want. But I always say that this free will comes with terms and conditions. Just like when you buy a product, the product is saying that this is the product, this is advertisement given to you, this is all the things which the product can do for you, and we give you warranty that it will be guaranteed for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, whatever. Though there is some guarantee given that this product will work perfectly according to our publicity and our descriptions in the product given. But terms and conditions, that these are terms and conditions under which it should work. So similarly, the living entity has been given this so-called free will, free choice, free independence, but with a condition. And what is that condition? That whatever actions you perform is your free will. And then Krishna explains this free will and the actions we perform. The actions we perform with this free will, which we think I'm independent, I'm the doer. What is that free will? It is in two categories, pious and impious. So you may do pious activities or you may do impious activities. There's only two categories. There is no in between. There's either completely impious or completely pious activities. And Krishna says, according to that, you will then reap results of it. The actions you perform, the reaction you get from that. If you perform impious activities, then obviously you will get suffering. If you do pious activities, then you will get some pleasure. But Krishna says, beyond that, exercising your free independence of pious or impious, you can decide by your own free will to understand who you are. And a lot of our Krishna conscious literature is emphasizing to know the self. That is why Prabhupada coined the word science of self-realization. That this is a science through which we can realize ourselves, who we are. And when we actually identify who we really are and go beyond this illusionary thing that I am aham brahmasmi, that I am independent, then we actually understand our real position. And what is the real position? Jivere Swarupo Nitya Krishna Das. Eternally, we are servant of Krishna. And therefore, we understand our real position. And what is our real position as a servant? To serve Krishna. But when we serve Krishna, we are not serving Krishna out of slavery or force, but it's done out of love. So that this is the transcendental understanding that the interaction between the living entity and Supreme Lord is a bond of love. There's loving exchange. As Krishna also says, Yatamam prapayante, that I will reciprocate with you as you reciprocate with me. So as we serve Krishna with love and exercise our free independence, free will to serve Krishna in many multitude ways of ways which are described in the scriptures, how we can serve Krishna, then Krishna also serves us in return. And this loving bond increases stronger and stronger, and then you are free from this illusionary world, and you actually go back to the real liberated stage of your constitutional position as Jivere Sarupa Hoy, Nitya Krishna Das. So that independence is illusion in this material world. And this is what the concept we have to understand, that free will is there, and because it is there, and the longer we are in the material world, and I'm sure most of us have been here for billions and billions and billions of lifetimes, not years, but lifetimes, going in this cycle of samsara, birth and death, that desire for independence becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And this is given as an example that if you have, let's say, a pet animal, a dog, you buy a 6-month-old puppy, and then you feed the puppy. And as you're feeding the puppy grows stronger and stronger and stronger. And the more and more you feed, the more and more stronger it gets. And when it becomes stronger, it comes to a stage where it will probably devour you, because it is so strong now. And the animal also, because you're feeding the necessary nourishment, it becomes stronger and stronger and powerful. So similarly, this free will, which we have been granted by the Supreme Lord, or minute independence, has been fed by our illusionary desires. And as we're feeding it more and more, the independence becomes more and more powerful, more and more stronger. And therefore, the desire to be always free from the Supreme Lord, not become subservient to him, because again, this illusion of being independent creates this perception that if I become subservient to the Supreme Lord, then I will be inferior. And we do not want to be inferior, because that's the ego. So ego has to understand that you are not any inferior. It's just like the sun and the sunshine. The sunshine is not any inferior to the sun, but its characteristic is different, but it's the same. So the spirit soul in quality is the same as Supreme Lord. So there is no need of inferiority or superiority. Only the ability to function in your as a living entity has got its own characteristics, and the Supreme Lord has his characteristics. At the same time, the qualities are the same. This is the point we have to understand. Am I clear?
No, absolutely clear, Maharaj. And I think those two big takeaways from what your explanation, one of them is that the difference between the world that we live in and identify ourselves so much on account of the 8,400,000 species that we have gone through for millions of lifetimes is, one is that we have been feeding this sense of independence, and I think that analogy is wonderful, where we are feeding this illusory understanding of ours, so that also makes us feel that we are independent of the Lord. And the second is there's a fear, because while we all talk about elements of slavery, that we shouldn't be enslaved to anybody. Today, if we talk about in any aspect of life, there's whole freedom and independence is the real buzzword. But actually, the point that you brought out is that with the Lord, the relationship is a bond of love, not of slavery. But our illusion is so steeped in our ignorance that we say that we are independent, but actually in the material dealings, we are enslaved in our material dealings. Though we talk about freedom and independence, but actually we are enslaved to everything and anything around us in the material world. And we give up on the bond of love, thinking that that is slavery. That to me is the biggest irony.
Yeah, because you see, in the material world also, this, as Prabhupada explains, the nature of living entity is load over everything. So that loading over everything means we want to become superior to everyone else. But in reality, we are all subservient to our existence.
Absolutely.
You may be a CEO of a company.
Right.
But then you see, you may be just a chief executive director of the company. But then there is the executive board under who you have to work.
Yes.
And then ultimately, beyond the board is the owner of the company.
That's right.
So, and as you go further down, you have different managerial positions or position of authority, but there is always authority higher than you.
Correct.
So, at any rate, in every aspect of life, there is someone higher than you. Even in family life, there's a father and there's a mother. And then the interaction between father and mother, you have children. Now, children think they are independent, but really, they are subservient to the father and mother. But then father and mother think, you see, we are the controllers, you are subservient to us. Then you turn around and say, there's your father and mother. So you are subservient to your father and mother. So obviously, even this so-called superiority and control position is relative, and it's an illusion of perception giving us that I'm in control of my situation, but nobody's in control of the situation. And therefore, I make this point that we have to distinguish between reality and illusion. The reality is that our dependence and our happiness lies in Krishna. And of course, Krishna says, my happiness lies in happiness in my devotees. So when you are a devotee of Krishna, Krishna becomes happy. And because Krishna is happy, the devotee becomes happy. So this is a two-way relationship of loving bond. There is no slavery here, but you do out of love. And the example given, especially this month, we are celebrating coming to the end of Damodar Ashtakam, month of Damodar, is the love between Mother Yashoda and Krishna. It's a very strong bond of love. Mother Yashoda is doing everything for Krishna out of love, not out of duty. She just loves Krishna. And then Krishna, of course, loves the mother. So he does everything to make her happy. So this bond of love is there. And then, of course, there are many other relationships of different devotees are explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam about loving exchanges between the devotees. And this is why we say loving exchanges between devotees and the Supreme Lord.
Excellent, Maharaj. Thank you so very much. I think we are already 39 minutes past 6. Is there any last comment or a question? We can quickly take that, or you can have it ready for tomorrow. Anything?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sunaja Mata.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Just a comment like the free will. So if all human beings have that free will, then how come we will be able to realize the real relationship between us and Krishna? Like always that free will, we will be trying to be away from Krishna, right? So what is that influence or the force?
Yes, you see, the free will is always going to be there. It will never diminish, because that is part and parcel of the living entity. As I explained, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is independent. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we are also have that free will and independence. Now, because as I explained earlier on, that Paramatma and Atma are always together. The Lord never abandons the Atma. Even though the Atma sometimes abandons the Supreme Lord out of his forgetfulness. So the Super Soul or Paramatma is always there, but you don't acknowledge him. But just because you are not acknowledging him doesn't mean he ceases to exist. He's always there. Now, out of his causeless mercy upon the living entity, Paramatma is with you every moment. And at some point, he sees the pitiful condition of the soul. And he shows his compassion by nudging you and awakening you. And this awakening you is what we call Athato Brahma Jignasha. That at some point in your life, you will question, why? Then you will think, maybe God So now you're acknowledging Paramatma. So Paramatma says, okay, now since you acknowledge me, I'm going to give you a little bit more insight because I will not interfere with your independence. But since you are coming to me, then I will go. Just like, say, suppose I'm sitting in a lounge with the person next to me, and I'm minding my business, and the person next to me is minding their business. And we are just doing whatever we do. Nowadays, of course, we see everybody with their little smartphones and either doing social media or playing some game or something. Everybody's doing their own thing. But the person sitting next to me, all of a sudden, out of curiosity, says, "Excuse me, are you some spiritualist?" I say, "Yes, I'm a Hare Krishna monk." What is all this Hare Krishna monk about? So now the person is asking me, what is this Hare Krishna all about? So now I have opportunity to speak to that person and tell them more in depth what a Hare Krishna devotee is all about, what is spiritual life all about. But if the person next to me was not at all interested and inquiring to me, I will not go and say, "Excuse me, I want to tell you about the Hare Krishna devotee and the devotee lifestyle and this and that and other." They will ignore me totally, just like the living entity is ignoring the Paramatma. But as I said, at some point, Athato Brahma Jignasha, that inquisitiveness comes. Say, God, why? Why this is happening? What's going on here? So of course, in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says there are 4 types of people who approach me. Some who want wealth, some who want free from disease condition, some just want to know God out of curiosity. And the 4th one, which is the best, is that they have some sense of self-realization and they want to get deeper their realization. So anyway, there are 4 categories of people who will approach the Lord. So even if you have free independence and free will, at some stage, Athato Brahma Jignasha will happen. And when that happens, then it is up to you now to take that one step and say, why God? And then when you say, why God? Then God will tell you a little bit more. And then you want to know more. Why? I want to know more. So the curiosity will increase. And then the Lord will give you more and more and more in-depth knowledge. And then the relationship of awakening, which Prabhupada calls the dormant love of Godhead, will awaken. And then it will begin to blossom. And it's blossoming, then you're on your way. But up to that point, Krishna will let you play your independent free will. But at some stage, out of his causeless mercy, because he's the most compassionate, best well-wisher of all living entities, he will nudge you at some time saying, "Hey, why are you suffering? Wake up."
Wake up.
Then you say, "Oh God, why?" That is the point. Athato Brahma Jignasha, which is the first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, comes into play. And when that comes into play, then the next step and the next step and next step, and you're on your way to self-realization.
Thank you, Maharaj. Very with exemplaries, you explained it very beautifully, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Maharaj, Maharaj, Hare Krishna, I'll ask question for tomorrow, basically.
Yeah.
Maharaj, today we say that when our vices are like a small puppy, we feed the puppy and it becomes slowly becomes a very big dog. And then it is after us, you know. So first is that how you realize that this is a vice. And second, the bad thing about this vice is that if you remove one, then the second one enters.
No,
So
this is the nature of the material world, no? That is why we are practicing Krishna consciousness to bring us to that knowledge, to differentiate between. They see, I will quickly tell you this point. You know, since we are freshly thinking about this, each living entity has given an ability to understand. In the human birth, as I explained, I think day before yesterday, that the human birth has got special powers of intelligence to distinguish between right and wrong.
Yes.
So you have this ability, like given by the Supreme Lord, to differentiate between the right and wrong, good and evil. Now the point is how you exercise that to differentiate between the vices which are harmful to you and what which is positive to you. So you have the intelligence, you have to use that intelligence to distinguish between right and wrong. This ability is given to every one of us to know what is right and what is wrong. Only thing is we have to practice it and put it into a practical term to realize what is right and what is wrong. But sometimes we know it is wrong, but because our overwhelming feelings are there, then we want to indulge in it. And then after you've done an act which is not so good, and you know it is not so good, later on then you say, your conscience comes and tells you, the conscience is now Paramatma speaking to you. I should have done that. It's such a bad thing I did. But it's too late now. You've already done it. But still, Paramatma is giving you that insight. Your conscious speaks to you. That conscious is the Paramatma. He speaks to you saying, look, I told you don't do it. You still went ahead to do it. Now you're regretting it. Okay, no problem. You've done it. You're regretting it. Time for you to change your course again and become more conscious that you don't do it again. Don't repeat it. So then we have that ability to know what is right and what is wrong. See, everywhere we see around us, we know the government's making all the rules and regulations for what? For society to function nicely and live happily. So all the rules and regulations the government is making in your individual countries is for the well-being of the citizens. But the citizens still break the law. So they break the law, then they have the police force, they have the judge, they have the courthouse, and then you go to the police arrest you, take you to the court, the judge will give you judgment and then put you in prison to realize that what you've done is wrong. And then the imprisonment is a time for reflection, that I'm in here for what? Okay, I did something wrong. Okay, let me reflect on it, and when I'm free from my jail sentence, I will not do it again. It's very simple. How to distinguish between the bad vices and what is good.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Point to add to Maharaj gave the beautiful example of imprisonment. Paresh Prabhu, there's another important benchmark that has been given to us to discriminate between what is right and wrong is the four regulative principles.
Yes.
When Prabhupada was preaching in the Western world, the Westerners, the kind of life that they indulge in, they never thought that it's vice. It was norm. It was the normal way of life for them. Now, Prabhupada didn't have to go into the details of how they lived. All he did was encapsulated everything in the four regulative principles that he gave to all of us to practice. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. So majority of the vices of this world, they fall under the categories of these four regulative principles. And as Maharaj said, there has to be regulations, like the state or the government puts certain regulations. So within spiritual life also, there are certain regulations. It's up to us whether we wish to follow or not, and the consequences thereof. So,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yes.
So
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, we will end here. It's 6:49. So thank you again, Maharaj, for your association, presence, and wonderful dissertation on the Chatuh Shloki Bhagavatam. We look forward to your association again tomorrow and for as many days as it is required for us to go through this wonderful subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll end our session here. All glory to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam Granth Raj ki jai. His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj ki jai. His Holiness Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai. Pancha kalpatarubhishya Patitanam pavanebhyo
Okay, Hare Krishna. Until tomorrow.
Maharaj, maybe